The LGBTQ plus movement is a religion.
The LGBTQ plus movement is just that, a movement.
The American Religious Town Hall meeting is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here is your host and moderator.
Welcome, viewers. Thank you very much for joining us for another program. My name is Andrea Luxton. I'm the moderator for today. I'm also the president of Andrews University in Michigan. We have an interesting and intriguing conversation today, but I'd like you first to meet the panelists.
I'm Bishop Michael Olson. I'm a Roman Catholic, and I serve as the Bishop of the Diocese of Fort Worth.
Hi, my name is Rabbi Dan Levin. I serve as Senior Rabbi at Temple Bethel of Boca Raton, Florida.
I'm Tom Plumley. I'm a minister in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. I serve at First Christian Church, Fort Worth, Texas.
Thank you all very much for being with us today. And here is today's topic. In a recent issue of The Critic, a British publication, Matthew Roberts, author of an article titled The Religion of Self-Worship, quotes from a letter that Steve Chalk of the Oasis Trust and Rowan Williams, former Archbishop of Canterbury, sent to the Prime Minister. They allegedly wrote, "To be trans is to enter a sacred journey of becoming whole, precious, honored, and loved by yourself, by others, and by God." The author of this article argues that the LGBTQ plus movement is now, quote, a sacred quest, no longer driven by science, common sense, or simple compassion, but by a transcendental vision, a desire for mystical fulfillment and metaphysical belief in unseen realities. This is, more than anything else, a religion, end of quote. With that in mind, we would like to ask our panelists three questions. Would you agree that the LGBTQ plus movement is, in fact, a religion? If it is, what kind of religion would it be? Is it Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, or something else? If it is not a religion, how would you describe it? So back to our panelists who began the conversation. Bishop.
Well, I think that with reading the article, I don't agree with everything in the article, but I think there's some insight here. It's a sociological metaphor, really, as a religion, in the sense that it has a narrative, it has a code of ethics, and it also has rituals and initiation, and all accompanied by a spirituality that's developed over time. That's really sort of a sociological description of a religion, and like most religions, they do begin as movements. And there's elements of that. There's heresies attached to this now and that are rejected. There are heroes in the narrative, and also there's very much a doctrine, which was described, really as a sense of self-discovery, self-identification, all right, and then being loved by oneself, by others, and by God. And I think that's really become somewhat true is a powerful force in our media, where this is a representative, that it's not just simply a definition by who one is attracted to physically, but rather the self-description of a ritual that begins with coming out, whether it's to one's parents or to others whom they love. There's a sense of self-declaration, and then this quest for self-identification. I think there's a history given, where there was the Stonewall riots in that history, or an entire liturgical calendar of a month of pride. There's other festive type holidays, and all of it does take on the character of a religion and the rejection of other worldviews, which is part of a religion, in the acceptance and embrace of a worldview and a code of ethics. So I think that's a very important metaphor, and I think it holds water some ways. With regard to its characteristics as Christian, Jewish, Muslim, I think those are different religions, and it may borrow from each and all of the above, given whatever one person's background is. And I think that's still the very fluid understanding of religion that's contemporary of today, and also the spirituality that's fluidic and contemporary of today.
Thank you.
I found the article to be dangerously cynical, and I think it was manipulative and disingenuous. If we think about other movements of the 20th century, the LGBTQ plus movement is very, very similar. So, for example, you could take the movement for civil rights, or you could take the labor movement, and they all follow a certain pattern. You start off with the recognition that there is a societal ill and an injustice that needs to be remedied. So in the case of civil rights, you're talking about racial barriers. In labor movement, you're talking about labor standards that were oppressive. And then there came to be a recognition of that injustice and in the organization around the remedying of that injustice, which involved all kinds of different ways in which people chose to organize and to write and to persuade people to have recognition, awareness of the injustice, and then to use various remedies that existed, whether it was through legislature or through the courts, to try to move a society to a much more just plane. In our traditions that we share, in the book of Deuteronomy, we are told, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Most of Jewish law says, if you encounter this, this is what you do. Justice is different. Justice is something that you have to go out and actively remedy. You have to search for opportunities to remedy it. And so when you think about the LGBTQ plus history of persecution, it is about as ugly as you have seen in human history. You're talking about ages after ages where gay people were systematically persecuted and murdered. In our modern times, they were run out of the military, they were shunned from society, they were discriminated against in housing, in employment, in all kinds of different elements of society, even in marriage. And so, to me, the LGBTQ plus movement is just that, a movement. It is a movement to remedy the social injustices of persecution, marginalization, and oppression that have been visited upon people who are lesbian or gay or queer in all the different varieties that expresses itself. And God willing, through that movement, which I think finds its grounding, frankly, in the spiritual traditions that various different gay people emerge from. Gay Christians, gay Jews, gay Muslims, and gay Hindus draw on the spiritual resources of their tradition to help them to find their pathways to wholeness. I agree with the letter that was apparently sent to the Archbishop, which said that it is a sacred journey to discover your true, authentic self. And we as a society ought to be supporting movements that help people to actualize the fulfillment of their humanity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think I agree with Rabbi Levin that the article is more than cynical, though. I think it's wrong. I think that Roberts bases his argument when you boil all of his argument down. It comes down to his statement that basically LGBTQ behavior is self-harm. But then he says it's not. It is both self-harm and self-worship at the same time somehow. I think it's problematic when we begin to denigrate something that we disagree with by calling it a cult. Now, there are real cults. There are real false religions. This is not one of them. This is a movement by people who are trying to discover all about how God made them to be. And that is a sacred journey. That is a pilgrimage that each of us must take to find out what it is that God made us to be. And I believe each of us is called to do that. Some folks have greater impediments placed in front of them by society and by religion, frankly, in coming to that understanding.
Well, I'm not an apologist for the article, but I've also, everything you've described is religious in character. Right? I mean, without even giving the description of false religion, you can say that, but there's a religious character.
There may be a religious
Right.
character to it, but I wouldn't describe the civil rights movement as a religion, though it has all those things. There are sacred heroes, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King. There are sacred spaces, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the Lincoln Memorial. There are sacred times, Martin Luther King's birthday, Juneteenth, which has now taken on more currency. But I wouldn't say that that's a religion, right? I think it's part of the trappings of a movement.
Is there anything different about that movement than in this movement? Or are they identical in a certain sense? Are the characteristics?
I think there's different pieces that you see that are endemic to movements. But just because something is a movement doesn't mean it's a religious. Though I would say, I think you're absolutely right, that there are elements of movements that are deeply spiritual, right, and that are grounded, I think, in the moral dictates of our various faith traditions.
Right, but there's also a code of ethics entitled here, and there is a ritual to all of this, and this is by their self-description within the movement. So the initiation of coming out, that's ritualized.
Yeah, but lots of people come out in a not ritualistic fashion.
Oh, the fact that you have to do it, though, is itself an initiation.
So can I take it away from
Sure,
is it a religion or not? As if you consider it is a religion, is that harmful to LGBTQ+ to think it that way? Is there something intrinsically harmful?
Well, I would
to
say
have that attachment.
It's meant in Robert's article to be harmful to the movement.
I think it's harmful because there are people who are deeply religious gay individuals, and their sexuality is not their identity. Their sexuality is the fact of their lives, but their identity is, I'm a Jew, I'm a Catholic, I'm a welder, I'm a teacher, I'm an accountant, I'm a son, I'm a daughter, I'm a parent, their elements of their identity are not wrapped up in their sexuality any more than it might be for a cisgendered heterosexual.
But right, and there's in each of those cases, there's also a decision of how does one self-integrate one's sexuality with one's way of life. So, I mean, sexuality is not the sole defining aspect, at least for most people, though that's not universal for either gays or straights or anything else. There's a sense of human integration that's got to take place just in basic life. So I wanted to take away this from the article because, frankly, I think there are religious elements of it, and I don't understand why, with the characteristics of this movement, there are those. So, for example, what does chastity look like in this movement? I mean,
I think it looks the same like it does in any other element of society.
Faithfulness to one's partner.
Well, that's right. Well, that's
Fidelity.
That's fidelity, right?
right?
Right,
Or
at least
those
that's
who choose not to
permanence.
engage in sexual activity until they're in a committed relationship.
Right.
But I think that the reason why you have a ritual, for example, around coming out is because you had people who were scorned, that it was so marginalized to be gay, that it was so unexpected that someone would be gay, that you needed to somehow let people know that you were going to live your life in a non-closeted way. But I think that
an Exodus experience.
it does, for sure. But I
Right.
actually find that now that there is more, I think, acceptance of gay life in larger society, I see, at least in my congregation, less of a ritual in coming out. Frankly, it just becomes a fact of who somebody is. And it's not as dramatic as it used to be because it's more accepted.
Right.
So it's becoming a mainline religion in many ways,
I just think it's a mainline way of living.
which is a religion in some sense.
The problem with what Roberts is trying to do, though, is to, I think, to infer that one cannot be a good Christian and be a part of this. One cannot be a good Muslim and be a part of this. One cannot be a good Jew and be a part of this. One cannot be a good Hindu and be a part of this. Because one has substituted for their Christian or Jewish or Muslim faith this other thing, and the LGBTQ Christians that I know would not see it that way at all.
And that's why I'm not an apologist for the article, without a doubt. All right, and I wanted to move it away, but I'm just talking about the religious elements and characteristic of it, which is really a morally neutral thing, is what I'm trying to say, and not a way of isolating anybody else or denying all those other aspects.
I guess the
to
thing
people.
that I wish we could create, perhaps in our ritual life, in our various different religious traditions, are ways that are endemic to our religious faith that would be pathways for gay people to find their sense of validation of who they are within the confines of their religious life, so that there would be a Jewish ritual that accompanied coming out, that there are the development of Jewish rituals around marriage for same-sex couples, that there are rituals that are emerging for the celebration of all different elements of life cycle for people who are gay, but in a Jewish context, so that it's not like, oh, if I want to celebrate this piece of my identity, I have to go to this other spiritual place, because I think it's actually more authentic for those people to be able to look within the faith tradition that is the one that grounds them in their humanity and in their own quest for God, and to find validation of the authentic nature of themselves.
Would your-
Isn't it more complicated within this stick with movement for now, with this movement compared to others? Because the position of different faith traditions on this is extremely different. So some faith traditions are far more open and accepting of this group than others are, or others would have expectations
Or aspects of it, yeah.
and aspects of it. So, you take something like the race or civil rights movement, there's a little bit of that, but basically you have a core across just about everywhere that says, well, this is...
Well, for example, in your tradition, you talk about marriage is to establish a household. Would your tradition permit that to transfer over to members of this community in establishing a household?
Well, I think it depends on which stream in Judaism you're looking at. In Reform Judaism, Reconstructionist Judaism, Conservative Judaism, without question, right? I think that when you read the Levitical prohibitions on same-sex intercourse as in context, you're looking at things that people would deliberately do to be abnormal. Whereas I think we've come to a realization in our day and age that people are gay because they're gay, and that you're looking at a different manifestation of committed love in a gay relationship. So if two people want to sanctify their commitment, if two people want to say, hey, we're going to consecrate the household that we're creating as two men or two women, I think that that is an absolutely fundamentally holy Jewish sacred thing that we should consecrate. Now, my Orthodox friends would disagree with me, and that's the interconversation that we have as Jews about how we read our sources and how we apply our tradition. In the same way, between a Catholic person and an Episcopal person might have differences in the way that they read the Scripture or actualize their faith traditions.
Sure.
Precisely.
And doesn't that then provide a conflict of religious identity amongst?
I think this
Certainly
is
it does.
sure it does.
But there was also, hopefully in times past, I guess you could say that there's a lot of it still, of people whose identity would not, whose Christian identity would not allow folk of different skin colors to marry. In fact, there are still places where that is taught within the Christian community.
It's a small segment, but you're right. They're heretical in some sense, if you want, from the main line of Christianity.
Okay,
Certainly.
good. We need to let's have a pause now. Let's have a break.
It's a very good discussion.
We hope you're enjoying today's program. If you'd like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the vision and history of the program, and we invite you to become a ministry partner, explore our Town Hall Estates healthcare facilities, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, we look forward to receiving your letters. You may write us at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. If you have a prayer request, please send it to prayerrequest@americanreligious.org. Thank you for writing and thank you for watching. Now, back to today's closing statements.
Welcome back, and I hope that you have enjoyed the energy of today's program and the different perspectives, where we're going to move now into our closing positions.
Human beings are naturally religious. It's something that everybody who's a human being has in common. I would say not just simply spiritual, but also religious, in that their spirituality attaches itself to a common story, common experiences of triumph and defeat, a common ethics, and also with accompanying rituals and initiation that change over time. In the Catholic tradition, marriage is seen as a ritual of commitment between two people that are permanent, exclusive, prepare each other for heaven, and are open to God's gift of children through the act of sexual intercourse within the confines of marriage. If one of those things are lacking, then the sexual act between a man and a woman, or between any two people outside of marriage, is immoral. And that is the Catholic tradition, and that's part of our Catholic religion. However, everybody as human beings are naturally religious, and that they not only desire a spiritual encounter with God, they desire an authentic actualization and understanding of who they are as people, and also possess a dignity precisely because they are human.
Thank you. My understanding of the Christian faith is that we are called to bring all that we are and all that we have before God, and ask God's blessing, pray for God's guidance and correction, but to be honest about everything that we are and who we are, and the exploration of that, the coming to understanding of who we are, is a process that is fraught for a lot more people than it is for others. and therefore we, in the community that I'm a part of, try to uphold each as they bring themselves before God and praise God and search for God's guidance and meaning as God has called them to be the best person that they can be.
So I think that the goal of any movement is to put itself out of business, right? So that ultimately you succeed in remedying the injustice that the movement formed to try to remedy. And I guess in some ways that's true of every religion, right? The goal of religion is to put itself out of business so that the world is redeemed and redemption will have arrived. So there are, I suppose, different religious elements to be found really in any movement because you're trying to advance towards a more perfect world, towards a world that is repaired and redeemed. And I think that the work for justice is compelling for religious people because it is a holy act, because it does draw on spiritual resources and holy energy when one is able to effect it. I ultimately believe that God really just wants each of us to use the religious traditions in which we find ourselves to be the best expression of our most authentic selves. I think that's what all of these social justice movements are also striving for, to allow the freedom for people to actualize their lives. And the more that we can do that, I think the more successful we will be as religious people and as people in pursuit of justice.
Thank you all very much, and thank you, viewers, for watching today. And you may have opinions on this particular issue. It's a very difficult one, and as you can see, often our panel agree. Today we've had some robust conversations on a topic that really is something that is very real to many people's hearts. And so please, you know where we are. Reach out to us. We want to hear from you. If you ask for our prayers, we would love to pray for you. If you have ideas for future topics, we would love to hear for those future topics from you as well. Thank you very much. For now, the Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestant, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. And now, friends, until next week at the same time and over the very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.